So, Martin, you've done loads of original reporting in the last few weeks, and you've uncovered some, frankly, extraordinary stories about cow experiences and things. And you've got another cracker this week. This, listeners, honest to God, do not press pause. This is really worth listening to because you found this amazing HS2 story that you're going to be posting to your Substack at the same time as this episode goes live. And I think it's fair to say, from what you've told me, you've not told me everything because, you've wanted to keep me in suspense, but from what you've told me, this sounds like it's going to rival the Bat Tunnel for sort of insanity, I guess.
Yeah, this is properly mad, and it starts with something that's quite simple by HS2 standards, which is a bridge across a railway. So let me set the scene for you, James. Deep in the heart of the Chilterns in rural Buckinghamshire, there's an incredibly complex section of HS2 that sort of alternates between tunnels and viaducts as it burrows through the hills and then spans the valleys in between them. And in the middle of all of this, there's a relatively simple railway cutting. And over that cutting, they're building a road bridge. And this is a remarkable bridge for a number of reasons, but one of them in particular, I think will literally make people's heads explode, James. And if anything, I would say that this makes the Bat Tunnel look like a pretty sensible day at the office.
You're really ramping up the hype on this, Martin, so you really need to deliver on this. So tell me about the bridge. Why is this bridge special?
So let's rewind it back a little bit. When the hybrid bill that sort of set out the plan for HS2 passed through Parliament, it effectively gave planning permission for the whole of the HS2 railway line between London and the West Midlands. And along with the line itself, it's all the other bits and pieces of infrastructure, temporary works, road diversions, lorry routes, and all the other stuff around the line that would be required. Now, the line cuts through hundreds of existing roads and footpaths and other bits of infrastructure, right? And so HS2 have to build dozens and dozens of different bridges, underpasses, drainage systems, and so on. And all of these are explicitly set out in the HS2 hybrid bill.
So basically, as a result, HS2, they're legally obliged to reconnect all of these roads and so on. The bill literally says every single thing they've got to glue back together after they finish digging their new railway line.
Yeah, and it really is like itemized line by line in this absolutely massive bill. So one of the places listed is an innocuous little country lane. It's called Bowood Lane. And for listeners who are following along with their own copy of the HS2 bill, you can find it on page 51, which is surprisingly early, given that this is something that you need like trucks and vehicles to move around. And the bill basically says they have to do a realignment on Bowood Lane, which is specified very narrowly to literally a meter of precision on the map. And they have to provide a bridge over the railway line at that point.
So that sounds pretty sensible, I guess. So what's so special about the bridge?
So partly it's special just because it's an HS2 road bridge, and basically these are like the Marks and Spencer of road bridges. So, whereas a normal bridge over a railway line, for example, would be built to last for 75 years, HS2 bridges, as for the whole project, have to be built to last 120 years. So they're built to a higher standard. They also need to be able to survive impacts from a massive train doing potentially 300 kilometers per hour without like completely disintegrating. And because it's a road bridge, it needs to be able to carry 2 lanes of traffic so stuff can pass. And it needs heavy, juicy structures to stop vehicles from, crashing and accidentally falling onto the track below. So you have, if you drive onto the bridge, the walls on either side are basically 6-foot tall reinforced concrete. This bridge is 70 meters long as well. There's like systems in place at either end of the bridge to stop cars from going off down the sides and kind of restraining them. And so we're talking about a pretty beefy 70-meter long concrete structure. Like this would not look out of place on like Normandy during D-Day, like full of Nazis shooting back at you. Although HS2, I have to say, are keen to stress that no Nazis were involved in the building or staffing of this bridge.
It's always worth checking these days, Martin, given the current political climate.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, so you've got this massive concrete bridge, I guess, in the middle of the Chilterns. And am I right in thinking, is this near Wendover? We talked on the show a while back now, in probably our most notable episode so far, all about Dobbins Lane, where there was the council kicking off against building there. So I'm guessing the council weren't too thrilled about this bridge either?
Yeah, so to sort of give the architects of the bridge a bit of credit, I'm not going to say it blends into the landscape because, if I'm honest, that's a stretch. But given what it is, the thought that's gone into it, the color of the concrete that they've used, and the sort of finishing quality, and the way they've kind of set the bridge down a bit into the cutting means that it's much less obtrusive than you would think. It's also in literally the middle of nowhere. So other than a couple of farmers or the occasional rambler, it's not going to be seen by lots of people. But the council, I think it's fair to say, were not thrilled. And this, James, is where we need to talk about holloways.
Okay, so is this some sort of, I don't know, weird rural thing that you countryside people do? Is this, I don't know, do you shoot foxes there or something?
Almost, James. So you see holloways a lot in Sussex, like where my parents lived, and in the Chilterns as well. Not so much, it has to be said, in the London suburbs. But essentially, they're ancient sort of single lane roads that have kind of sunk down into the ground over the centuries. So if you're driving along this in a car, you look on either side and you've got earth piled up on either side and trees above you and vegetation and so on. So you're sort of almost going through like a kind of open tunnel, effectively. It's the kind of place that Google Maps sends you if you're having a really bad day in the car.
It sounds like it'd be quite good for Instagram, though. I mean, more so than like the M3 or something.
Oh, yeah, definitely photogenic, if not particularly drivable. Now, Bowood Lane, it turns out, is a holloway. And so the council, very reasonably, James, wanted to know if HS2 could possibly make this 70-metre long, 2-lane concrete road bridge better resemble a narrow rural holloway to sort of blend it into the surrounding landscape.
Did they get like wetter in like Peter Jackson to try and sculpt or model something? How? And anyway, haven't HS2 already got planning permission for the bridge at this point?
So they have, but the hybrid bill gives councils powers to basically argue about a lot of the design details. Now, in theory, this was supposed to be like an expedited fast track process with the DFT, Department of Transport, acting as kind of a referee and able to step in if things got out of hand. And for some of the route, that worked reasonably well, similarly to something like Crossrail. But certain councils decided to go basically full militant. And one of those was Buckinghamshire. Now, we could, and we probably will someday, do a whole episode on the legal warfare that's taken place between Buckinghamshire County Council and HS2. A lot of the problems here come from the fact that Buckinghamshire is a Conservative run council for much of recent history. Obviously, the government, particularly in the last 10 years, didn't necessarily want to step in and overhaul local politics. And so there's a lot of kind of reluctance, I think, of people to kind of take charge of the situation and actually cut through this stuff and kind of make it happen. But essentially, they spent a very large number of months going back and forth over the detailed design of the bridge. And to be clear here, most of the design decisions for the bridge are led by engineering and safety. So there's only a very small amount of latitude that you have in building this bridge. It has to have the reinforcement around it. It has to have the 6-foot tall concrete walls on either side to stop cars falling off. Like, there's only so much that you can do about it. And it has to be, crucially, a 2-lane bridge. That's the sort of standard that you have to build these road bridges to. But the council insisted that because the holloway is 1 lane, the bridge should be 1 lane as well. Now, the bridge was already built and was already 2 lanes, so the compromise that they reached was basically the road would still be 2 lanes, but they would paint a single lane down the middle of it, leaving like a massive gap on either side of the white lines between this sort of single lane and then like the curb 3 feet away.
So the plan was to go to the expense of building the massive bridge and then make it less useful deliberately.
Yeah, and I mean, the idea is if cars need to get past, they can just sort of drive over the lines. But the idea is it sort of, I don't know, gives cars the impression, the fiction that it's single lane, and therefore maybe they'll drive slower, which I can't really see happening. And you can see images of this that I've put on the Substack post, and it looks exactly as mad as it sounds. Actually madder, because what the council also wanted to disguise this bridge and make it look more rural was to put 7-foot grass verges on either side of that single lane. So you would basically have this massive concrete bridge. You'd have like this single lane down the middle. You'd have your 6-foot concrete walls on either side, but you would disguise them with a small piece of turf in front, which again is ridiculous.
And nobody pointed out that this was mental.
No, people tried, I think, but no. So well, I mean, eventually they did. So this eventually goes to the Department for Transport for appeal. The council fail in this appeal, and the planning inspector gives one of those it's one of those reports, like official reports, where even though it's in very formal language, you can kind of read a lot of subtext between the lines. At one point, he writes, providing 2 wide verges planted with grass with a 3.5 meter wide carriageway between them, in my view, would not mimic a sense of being within a hedge-lined holloway. And then he points out, quite rightly, that the entire point of holloways is they don't have any kind of verge. There's just walls on either side. And he goes on to write, and I'm paraphrasing very, very slightly, that essentially the idea that you can disguise a 70-meter long concrete bridge with a couple of strips of grass is completely fucking mad.
This is absurd, Martin. So the council, they were overruled. So just to confirm, the bridge has been built now, right? It physically exists in the world. It's a thing that listeners can spend the weekend and go and have a look at. So even if it looks a bit silly, everything is fine. We have a bridge.
Yeah, it's a great bridge. It's fine. It's in use at the moment. Periodically, you can walk across it, cycle across it, drive across it if you really want to. It's capable of safely carrying 2 lanes of traffic, even though only one of those lanes is painted. It has a beautiful grass verge on either side of it, much smaller than the council wanted. And it's kind of permanently in the shadow of the concrete walls. So I imagine the grass will all die and be overtaken by weeds in the next few months. And that will look absolutely lovely. And it's an incredibly impressive bridge. Like the engineering to build it, like everything on HS2 is stunning. Like they've driven concrete piles deep into the ground and then kind of excavated out the earth underneath the bridge to form this massive cutting that HS2 will speed through at 300 kilometers an hour. The concrete is of the highest standard of quality and finishing. So when you're there on a bright day, and I took some photographs of this, it almost seems to kind of blend into the sort of grey autumnal sky behind it. It's probably, I would say, one of the best small rural road bridges genuinely that has ever been built in the UK.
Martin, we've done this podcast for too long. I get a sense there's a but coming here.
There is just one tiny problem with this bridge, James.
Okay, Martin, go on, tell me.
Well, there isn't really a road.
Sorry, say that again.
So, Bowood Lane is technically a public highway. And so, as part of the Act, HS2 were required to build a fully spec'd road bridge for it, and a road bridge is required to meet certain standards. And so that's what they've built, this big 2-lane road bridge. But if you drive up to either end of Bowood Lane, you can see a big blue sign which says, and I shit you not, unsuitable for motor vehicles.
Fuck off.
So
what?
So technically, cars aren't banned. I didn't try to take the Jag up it, even though I was a little bit tempted. If you're feeling adventurous, you could probably drive a 4x4 up there, but probably not if it was like new, or you cared about the paintwork, or you wanted to keep it in one piece. I've posted pictures of this on my Substack, but what you're looking at, it would be a stretch to even call it a farm track, because at least you could drive like a Land Rover up most farm tracks. If you tried that here, you'd be scraping the wings through like hedgerows. Like, as you see from the picture, it literally looks like a footpath. And that's from the west side. From the east side, it's basically a strip of grass. Like, you wouldn't even know that there'd ever been any kind of road there.
Yeah, I'm looking at the photo you sent me now, Martin. It looks just like a lovely rural footpath. Looks like where you take the dog for a walk at the weekend or go rambling or something, not somewhere where you drive a car.
Yeah. I mean, you'd be insane to try and drive a car down that. Apparently, one woman actually got sent on a wild detour by Google Maps in her car. She kind of entered the lane at one end and got a certain, part of the way up it, and then realized that there is, as you can see, absolutely no possible way of turning around. So she has to drive all the way up to the HS2 construction site where they're building the bridge, like bits of car falling off along the way, gripping the wheel, absolutely terrified. Eventually manages to somehow get her way to the bridge, and all these construction workers and security guards are there. Like this deeply traumatized woman turns up, and they have to figure out how to basically turn the car around, and then she has to go all the way back down it because there's no other way out. And that must have been pretty terrifying.
That's insane, Martin. How would you even get a car like up there? I don't even understand. This is mental.
Yeah, I mean, you can see from the picture that there is not room for a
Mm.
car, and you wouldn't unless you were like lost or mad or stuck in some kind of fugue state. But to summarize, James, HS2 had to fight the council for months on end over the specific design of a road bridge that's going to cost millions of pounds of taxpayer money, 70 meters long, fully specs road bridge to reconnect essentially a grass track to a footpath because that's what the hybrid bill told them they had to do.
This is absurd, Martin. This should be up there with the Bat Tunnel. So couldn't someone have intervened before this happened? Was no one throughout this whole process of planning and building and constructing a bridge, did anyone ever stop and say, what are we doing here?
So quite a few people, like local people, for example, because even when this sort of occasionally had cars going up, it was barely used. Like there's survey data from the early 2000s I found, which said that something like 20 or 30 cars would use this in total in both directions in the course of a 24-hour period. And that was 25 years ago. And honestly, like, I don't think anything's been up there recently. There's no houses or properties. The lane doesn't serve anyone. It doesn't really go anywhere. It's just a kind of rural shortcut across some fields between a farmhouse and the A413 on the other side. So a lot of local people have said, well, why not just turn this into like a bridleway or a cycle path or a footpath? You could create a lovely public amenity for joggers and cyclists and horse riders and so on. It would be better for the community if you don't have vehicles on it. That, of course, just makes it much safer and more attractive for everybody, kind of reduces traffic and pollution. And more to the point, if you speak to people at HS2, they would say, if we hadn't had to build a road bridge, we could have built a much smaller bridge. We could have provided, a footbridge, and that would have been much smaller, more discreet. They could have designed it more attractively in keeping with the sort of style that the council wanted, and would also have been a fraction of the cost. So literally everybody would have been a winner. And all it would have taken really is for the local council at some point to step in and kind of take control of the situation and say, hey, this is a bit absurd. Let's redesignate the road. Let's just say this isn't a road anymore and do the work and turn it into a footpath. But instead, James, they fought to embellish this road bridge with 2 strips of flat grass and a painted lane down the middle.
Martin, I'm fucking furious. That at least the Bat Tunnel technically had a purpose. Whether it works or not, the idea was it was going to protect bats. This is doing literally nothing and is costing millions of pounds. And we wonder why HS2 is so expensive. I feel like I want to join the Taxpayers Alliance or something. What the hell's going on? What is wrong with this country?
It's properly like, I mean, you've built a road bridge where there isn't a road. I don't think there is a better symbol of just the absurdity of this sort of detached, consequence-free, massively legalistic kind of British bureaucracy than this that we can think of. And ultimately, I think this is probably why we're poor.